Hello, everybody. It's Bryony. How is everybody? This is very strange. I need to take down the welcome to our first ever mental health mates at home. Which is with me, Bryony. I founded Mental Health Mates 5 years ago now as a way to connect with people like me. I apologize in advance if there are any technical glitches because this is all coming from home. I'm going to show you around my home. There's my floor drobe there. This is my bedroom. This is where look, that's a terribly made bed there. But at least I tried to make it. Tonight, so if there are any glitches, I do apologize in advance. I don't know if you can see me or that Mental Health Mates at Home with Bryony Gordon thing, but we'll make it work as we go along. So good. People are putting messages saying they can see me, so that's good. I hope it's good. I hope you don't mind seeing me. So Mental Health Mates at Home. To those who don't know, Mental Health Mates is a peer support group which I set up to try and connect with other people like me, because I heard that 1 in 4 statistic the whole time, 1 in 4 people experience a mental health issue every year, but I never met anyone who identified as having a mental health issue. And bear in mind, this was 5-6 years ago. So I decided to set up Mental Health Mates, a place where people could get out and walk and talk and connect about the stuff that they felt very alone in their heads with. And obviously, it's now grown all over the country. Obviously, at the moment, we can't go out for our walks and our talks because we are in lockdown. But we have realised at Mental Health Mates, more than anything in the last year since this pandemic has taken hold, that connection is absolutely key. And so we wanted to recreate the magic of a Mental Health Mates walk online. Now, we have amazing Mental Health Mates walk leaders all over the country who have been fantastic at taking their walks online to Zooms. And you can get all the information for those on our website, which is www.mentalhealthmates.co.uk. If there isn't a walk or a Zoom meetup in your area, of course, you can go to any Zoom, doesn't matter where you live. But this year, we want it to be the year that hopefully, fingers crossed, restrictions will eventually be lifted. And when they are, we want to grow Mental Health Mates. So there's one in every town and city in the country. So if you feel like you might want to set up a Mental Health Mates where you live, or you know someone who might do, please head over to our website, mentalhealthmates.co.uk, where you can get all the information about becoming a walk leader and all the support. And we have an amazing team who will support you through that. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have set up MHM membership, and you can also find the information about joining Mental Health Mates. And that's just to feel closer part of our community. And that's all the information on that, and this is in its very early stages as well, is also on the website. Thank you everyone for coming. This is also, as you can probably see, being broadcast live on Facebook. I find this very, very strange because I know that there are 68 of you here, and I know there are others watching on Facebook, but I can't see you. But hopefully, as this session goes on, it would be great if you have questions, please place them in the Q&A box. So if you are new to Zoom, at the bottom you'll see a carousel of things you can do. We would like, just to simplify it because there's loads of you, please would you put your question in the Q&A box. It's quite simple and you can type it in and then I can answer live. And if you fancy actually asking me vocally, please write live before your question, and then what I will do is I will invite you to come on and actually we can talk it through. So anyway, the first session of Mental Health Mates at Home, each month, and they're going to be on the first month of every first Monday bear in mind. The technical glitches that we suffer will be entirely from my brain, everyone, by the way. Nothing to do with actual technology. So it's going to be on the first Monday of each month, and I will be hosting them. And fortunately, each month I will be interviewing someone different. It's not just me talking about me and my books, although this first one it is. So I am going to be talking about my new book, No Such Thing as Normal, what my mental illness has taught me about mental wellness. And I want to answer questions as well on the book, and see if I can help you. Now, I just want to make it really clear, I'm not a professional, so I can't diagnose things. I can't really talk about medication or anything like that. But I do have a lot of experience of mental illness. I've experienced obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, eating disorders, and I'm an alcoholic in recovery. So let me talk to you first about this book and the ideas that how it came about. Now, in the 5 years since Mental Health Mates has been going, I've been so fortunate to meet other people with mental health issues. And I say that because for so long, alone in my own head, I really felt like all of my mental health issues were flaws and they were failures. And what was really interesting was that as the first lockdown was being announced, I had imagined, as someone with a history of mental health crisis, that I would freak out over lockdown. And an interesting thing happened, which was that I didn't. I remained quite calm. And a lot of other people I knew who I'd met through Mental Health Mates also felt quite calm. And it was interesting that a lot of people who hadn't experienced mental health crisis, who had always seemingly breezed through life, they were the ones who were freaking out. And it occurred to me then that actually so many of the things that we perceive as flaws and failures in ourselves are actually more like just superpowers. And I wanted to put it down in book, everything I've learned, all of the amazing things about mental wellness that I could only have learned through getting treatment for mental illness. So that's what this book is. But there's also, at the heart of it, is how to ask for help, because we hear so much about how bad mental health provision is in this country, and it's important we keep banging that drum, because if we don't, the government will continue to ignore it or try to ignore it. But if you're in mental health crisis, hearing that mental health provision isn't that great isn't actually in itself very helpful. And so what I wanted to do was find out what is available, what kind of waiting times should we be expecting, what happens if we don't get what we expect, how do we put in a complaint, how do we get the best out of the system that we can, and also, what are the things that we can use aside from the NHS that exist? I know that the there's all sorts. I mean, there's obviously there's mental health mates, but we hear so much about the Samaritans. And I wanted to look into what actually happens when you call the Samaritans. What should you be expecting? So I spoke to loads of mental health professionals and people. Do you know what? I'm wearing this very glamorous hairband that my mother bought me for Christmas, but it's really heavy and it's really hurting my head, so I'm going to take it off. Sorry, that was my one concession to glamour and it's gone. Right, are we all comfortable, everybody? Is everybody comfortable? Has everyone taken off any of the glitzy, annoying stuff that just gets in the way? I want this to be a super comfy session. I want you to be in your PJs. You can be naked if you want. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I can't see you. No one else can see you. It's fine. Get cozy. Right. Where was I? So No Such Thing as Normal. So it came out last week, and it's all of the things that I wish that someone could have told me back when I was first in extreme mental health crisis, back when I was, the first time I went through one, which was when I was about 11. And I hope it really helps you. It's available on bookstores. I feel I'm really bad at self-promoting my own books. So I'm going to check out the questions. We already have some questions coming in. So Janine says she'd love to help support a group. There's already one set up in her town, Reading. How would that work? Right. Well, we do have the mental health mates walk leader from Reading here, I do believe. So maybe if Abby doesn't mind, I'm going to ask you to come in and talk. Abby, are you there?
I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Abby. So Janine was asking about how she could help support you in a mental health mates walk.
You can definitely help support me. That would be brilliant. Janine, are you the one that I was talking to over email and Facebook last night? Because if so, I think you're coming along to the next Zoom. So maybe we can have a chat after that. But yeah, absolutely. Because my time is limited as well, and all the help would be brilliant.
The other thing, just I'm bringing you on, Abby, because I've spoken to you before, but can you just tell me what you get out of the connection with mental health mates and how especially it's helped you in during lockdown?
I think particularly during lockdown, it's massively helped just to have people to talk to that that know what you're going through. And like you said, Bryony, and I know you said it before about lockdown has actually made me calmer than ever. And I don't know whether it's my inner hermit coming out. But I think just, we were doing every week during the first lockdown. We're actually doing every other week Zooms at the moment. And it's just to chat to people about nonsensical stuff, whether it's from what medication you take to your last panic attack to what was on telly. I mean, on Saturday we had the widest of variation of conversation, and it's just people that understand you. It's just such a lovely group, and I've made so many friends through it. It's amazing.
This is the thing why I set it up, and I feel so privileged to. It's really interesting because when I set, like 5 years ago, when I first was thinking of setting up mental health mates, I felt really alone and isolated, and I felt, I was suicidal, and I would never ever at any point have thought of my mental illnesses as something that I'd be grateful for. And it's really interesting that now I am, it was only through mental health mates that I started to really look into recovery and what that might look like for me, and gather the courage actually to really push for it. But the interesting thing to me is that now, as I said, I feel really grateful that I've been through all the things that I've been through, because they have actually made me stronger as a person. And of course, this sounds trite and really annoying if you're in crisis right now, and I do apologize to everyone if you are, but it is true. Everything you're going through right now will help to make you stronger. And that's what I wanted to kind of get across in that these things that feel, someone told me something once which really stayed with me, which is that all we think growth happens in the light, right? Because we learn about photosynthesis and everything, but actually all growth happens in the dark. That's when we're growing and we are learning, and we are, and we are, and the fantastic thing, and I'm burbling a bit now, is that there's, it's that thing that you realize that all of the stuff that we go through in our heads alone, with mental health mates, I've realized that I'm not a freak. Do you know what I mean? I'm just a person with a brain. Abby, I really appreciate everything you do. I want to talk a bit. I'm gonna mute you now. I just want to talk.
No problem.
And I don't know how I disable talking. Right. I wanted to talk a bit about something I explore quite a lot in this book. And actually, I thought maybe I might just read the first few pages, so that you can maybe get an idea of what this book is about. Right. In March 2020, it became clear to me that the world was ending, or at the very least, that the world as we knew it was ending. I have, in truth, been predicting the end of the world since I was about 9 years old, where my mental ill health first manifested itself as an obsessive worry about nuclear war, fire, and wide-scale flooding. All those normal worries you have as a child. As I got older and moved into adulthood, it became clear that this anxiety about the world ending was not going anywhere. If anything, it was just getting worse, and I seemed to live in a perpetual cycle of Armageddon. There was no issue too small for my mind to latch onto and feed until it became a cause of intense apocalyptic anxiety. Texting someone and not hearing back was never just a sign that they were busy. It was evidence that I had done something terrible without realizing it and had now been excommunicated. A telling off from a boss because I had missed a deadline was never just a simple telling off. It was a sign that I was about to be sacked. A woozy feeling was never just a woozy feeling. It was probably a heart attack or a stroke or carbon monoxide poisoning. I bet, I'm just going off weight. I bet you there's loads of people in here who have that health anxiety, not have carbon monoxide poisoning. Please put it in the chat if you do. People often talk about the world being on fire. Sometimes I felt as if my skin was too. I was in a constant state of emergency, sheltering in place 24/7 from the catastrophic death scenes playing out in my head. Some people prep for crisis by stockpiling canned food or building underground bunkers. I did it by comprehensively stockpiling information on all the ways in which I was a fuck up, sorry for the swearing, and keeping that information in the underground bunker of my brain so that I was always primed and ready for the inevitable end of my world. My world was going to end because I was secretly a serial killing paedophile who had blanked out my crimes in horror. I wasn't, but I had a common, although rarely talked about, form of OCD known as puro, which made me think I was. My world was going to end because my hair wouldn't stop falling out. I had alopecia. I do have a bit now at the back, but you can't see it. My world was going to end because my boyfriend was going to leave me, and how could I survive without him? I was in an abusive relationship. My world was going to end because I didn't look the way I thought I was supposed to look. I was bulimic. My world was going to end because I couldn't stop drinking or taking drugs. I was an alcoholic and an addict. My world was going to end because surely my child was going to be taken away from me. I was still an alcoholic and an addict. My world was going to end because I couldn't bear it, because I could not get out of bed and live in it anymore, because it was too painful. And although I was terrified of death, I was by now more terrified still of living. It's somewhat ironic then that by the time the world as we know it actually began to end, I was no longer plagued by apocalyptic thoughts and was even rather enjoying life. I barely thought about ways in which the world might end at all. I was too busy enjoying its continuing spin. In March 2020, when the new coronavirus was announced by the World Health Organization as a pandemic and the entire planet started to shut down bit by bit, as this terrifying disease traveled towards us almost in slow motion, I was bizarrely in a good place. I had, in the words of my therapist, done the work. More about that in the book later. Even though at times I hadn't a clue that I was doing it. Does wailing into the wind count as doing the work? Apparently so. I was 2.5 years sober. I attended 3 or 4 12-step meetings a week. I saw my counsellor from rehab regularly. I had carved out an accidental life as a mental health campaigner, writing and talking about the things that made me feel bad in the hope that it might make other people feel good. And I knew that through decades of feeling like I was losing my mind, I had miraculously found it. It wasn't always pretty. It was sometimes incredibly messy, but it was there. And I felt that I had studied every synapse of it through the work I had had to do to get better. The world as we knew it was finally ending, and the most bizarre thing had happened. I knew everything was going to be okay. Or more accurately, that it was going to be messy, uncertain, stressful, fraught, frightening, lonely, and overwhelmingly sad, but that it would still be okay. It would be whatever it was going to be, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do to stop that, no matter how many rolls of toilet paper I bought or how many antibacterial gels I squirted onto my chapped hands. I didn't panic, I didn't freak out. What would have been the point? I had turned into the shrugging emoji, and it was kind of miraculous. All those years spent locked in my own head, alone, convinced the world was going to end. And now it sort of was, and we all had to enter lockdown together in the spirit of common good. Well, that was a walk in the park compared to some of the shit I'd been through and some of the scenarios that had taken place in my brain. I was not alone in this. In the early days of the coronavirus pandemic, we saw I'm the only person that calls it coronavirus pandemic. We saw a curious inversion of norms. The people I knew who'd always seemed to cope really well with life suddenly collapsed in shock, whereas those who'd been through extreme mental health challenges seemed to be okay. More than that, they seemed to be providing support to those people who normally breeze through life without a care in the world. Now everyone was looking to us for advice on how to deal with anxiety and uncertainty. And I realized suddenly that so many of the things I'd long considered flaws and failures in myself were really more like superpowers. That gave me the idea for this book, which I hope will help people who are trying to deal with a mental health issue. I hope it will give you some tools to move through the madness of your mind, learn from that madness, and see it not as something you wish to forget, nor as something that makes you a failure, but as something that makes you a success, something that has made you stronger. Mental illness has led to some of the worst times of my life, but it has also led to some of the most brilliant, like me being able to talk to you guys right now. Pardon me, I just burped a little bit, but I haven't eaten yet. Or I had my lunch repeating on me. Bad things happen, but good things can come from them. I am not defined by my mental illness, but it is part of me, and my life is defined by my mental health. And strange as it might sound, my mental health has been vastly improved by being mentally ill. And it's not just me. Those people I know whose lives have at some point hit the skids are some of the wisest, strongest, most awe-inspiring humans I've ever met. This might sound trite to anyone currently trapped in the depths of mental despair. The deadness of living with mental illness does not feel life-affirming when you are in the midst of it. And there were many times when I would have gladly swapped the struggles that inspired my well-meaning friends and family for a relatively normal life that didn't involve looking out of the window to see if the police were coming to arrest me for the imaginary crimes my brain insisted I'd committed. But I couldn't swap them. Unfortunately, that's not how the world works. And wishing and railing against what was, well, after many years of trying this approach, I had to accept that it didn't work and that it might even be making things infinitely worse. I needed to take the negatives and turn them into positives. I was inspiring. I was a goddamn superhero with special powers, and I was going to use those special powers for some sort of good to show the villain in my head that it was not going to beat me. I think that people who've experienced mental illness are remarkable superhumans because more often than not, they are battling several villains at once, primarily the mental illness, but also the stigma around it and the piss poor systems that are supposed to help the mentally ill, which often make things much, much worse. Sorry, I do not want to make out that mental health issues can magically be made better by a pretty book written by a privileged middle-class woman. I cannot write with any knowledge about schizophrenia or personality disorders, but I know of many authors who can, and I've listed them at the back of this book. I'm a woman who's experienced depression, OCD, alcoholism, addiction, eating disorders, and some drug-induced psychosis. Nothing makes me happier than being able to use this platform to share with you some of the things I've learned about being well that I could only ever have discovered through being very, very ill. Please feel free to discount them or disagree with them at any stage, for I am not an expert on mental illness, just someone who has a lot of personal experience of it. And I don't want to present myself as some guru who knows it all. If being unwell has taught me anything, it's that I most certainly don't know it all, and that 10 years from now, I will probably be looking back on this piece of work, slack-jawed with astonishment that I felt in any way qualified to write it, given how little I knew at the time. This happens to me quite regularly. I'm hit with a sense of absolute awe that I have made it to the grand old age of 40, despite my complete lack of self-awareness for the majority of those years. I want this to be a book that you take gently and that you feel you can dip in and out of it if needs be, because I know that concentrating can be hard when you're in the grips of a depression or some other mental illness. Above all, I hope this book will help you to see that you have the power to get through absolutely anything, from a global pandemic to the apocalyptic scenes in your own head. I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour of the book. It's, as I said, it's something I want people to be able to dip in and take, because I know from personal experience that when you are in crisis, it's so difficult to concentrate. I don't know if that resonates with anyone. So I want you to be able to, even if you just look at it for 30 seconds. I am going to go, oh, some questions have come in. Right. Now, here we go. Now, please, as I said, if you want to ask a question, I will, sorry, I'm just getting to grips with this. I will, okay, I'm gonna, Tracy, I would like to get you to come on and answer this question, ask this question that you want to ask live, if that's okay. So I'm going to allow you to talk. Tracy, can you hear me? Tracy, I'll ask you to unmute. This is very smooth, isn't it? Okay. That doesn't seem to be working. Right, I will disable talking, and I will read you Tracy's question and answer it. So Tracy asks how my OCD has manifested during COVID. Tracy says she's really struggling by not attending face-to-face CBT sessions, seeing friends and family, constant daily battle with her OCD getting her down. Any help or advice? Tracy, first of all, what I would like to say to you is you are an absolute legend for even writing that and having the courage to admit that. OCD. So I would like to just touch on really, this I think is something that is important. This I think applies to all mental illnesses, not just OCD. I worry, so having said all of that stuff that I've said at the beginning of the book about how we are prepared for crisis as people who have experienced mental health crisis, I also completely understand the effect that lockdown and this situation long term can have on our mental health. And it's caught me out as well. It's insidious, it creeps up on you. And I found myself having to have treatment for binge eating disorder, which I've written about in the book. Because it gets to us, and these things do appear during stressful times of crisis, right? So first of all, I want to say that to you, please don't beat yourself up and feel like you're going backwards. You're not. Your brain is responding to completely extraordinary circumstances in a very ordinary way, okay? So first of all, one of the things I tried to get across in No Such Thing as Normal is the fact that a lot of mental illness, all mental illness, is our brain basically misfiring in a misguided way to protect us. So, for example, schizophrenia, if we talk about schizophrenia, what I can talk about it is that two of the most well-known symptoms of it are paranoid delusions and delusions of grandeur. And we know that actually these are very primal instincts that go back to when we were first humans and we were in, say, in the African plains, and we had to be looking over our shoulders the whole time for rival tribe members or lions. What's that? Looking over paranoid delusions. And if you came up against a lion or a rival tribe, what would you do? You'd make yourself big. Delusions of grandeur. So a lot of mental illnesses, I use that as one example, and we all know the anxiety example, that it's an evolutionary response out of all proportion, basically. But I think that once you start to realize that your brain is an organ like any other, it's also one of biology's greatest mysteries, okay? And like any other organ, your brain will misfire sometimes, okay? So, and it's most likely to misfire in times of stress, times when our chemistry is all out of whack. So firstly, I'd say to you, Tracy, that this is very normal. The other element, the string of this, I want to say is that the thing I say that all mental illnesses have in common, all of them, is that they lie to you, right? They tell you you're a freak, they tell you you're alone, and they tell you that no one's going to understand what you're going through. And that is just bullshit. Apologies for swearing. Not only does someone understand what you're going through right now, Tracy, there is someone right now probably watching this webinar who is also going through what you're going through. But I say all of this because what I want to explain is that mental illnesses work in a very similar way to abusers. They thrive in a culture of silence, right? They thrive by isolating you. And what we have in this situation is lockdown is state-sanctioned isolation, basically. So we're not allowed to make those normal connections, Tracy, as you point out in your question. You can't see your friends, you can't connect with your family. But what we can do is try and keep connected as much as possible. So even if once a day you're doing a FaceTime with someone, or you're coming to something like this, or maybe you're setting up a mental health mates in your own area, that's what you've got to do. You've got to, I find the thing is that we've got to make a plan. We've almost got to treat the situation we're in now, like almost be like on a wartime footing. I know that sounds dramatic, but what do I have to do to survive today? What do I have to do to get through it? Okay, I don't have to excel at anything. I don't have to be brilliant at homeschooling. I saw someone today saying that this isn't homeschooling. Homeschooling is a situation where parents remove them, they take a conscious decision to take their children out of mainstream education and educate them at home. This isn't that. This is emergency education. So you've got to do the best you can, but you don't have to be brilliant at it. And that's what I'm saying. You just need to, just to kind of like breathe, get through each day, survive, and you will get through it. We will get through it. And when we get through it, we will have learned something and we will have come out stronger. And I hope that doesn't sound too trite. Right, I am going to go to all right, there's a load of questions coming in, so I'm just scrolling through. Right, where are we? Okay, Rebecca. I'll answer this one quickly, Rebecca. I'm going to answer live. What made you speak up about OCD? I really value your books and how genuine you talk about OCD and don't sugarcoat it. Right, the reason I spoke up about my OCD was because I needed to find other people that had OCD. Because as I said, and it's the same reason I set up Mental Health Maze, I kept reading about how mental illnesses were very common and lots of people had them, but I never met anyone who admitted to having them. And I needed to meet someone, I needed to connect with them, and I needed to know that I wasn't mad, or I was mad and that was okay, but I wasn't bad, if that makes sense. And so that's why I wrote about my OCD. That's why I do everything I do. That's why I'm here tonight, is because I want to connect with you guys, because connecting with you guys makes me feel better. It makes me feel less alone. And I still can go deeply into my own head and be full of anxiety and intrusive thoughts and all the rest of it. And then I'm brought back and I'm grounded by coming and doing something like this and seeing, Rebecca, that you too have OCD, or Tracey, you have OCD. And that doesn't give me any joy to know that other people have this horrible illness. But I do get some comfort to know that I'm not a freak. I'm a normal person with a brain, and my brain happens to have OCD. And when I remember that, I get the distance and the time to bring in my healthy coping mechanisms that help me to deal with my OCD. So that's why I do it. I hope that's helped. Right, Carly's struggling. I'm so sorry you're struggling with your mental health, with depression. Carly says she's trying to access help but feels frightened. And thank you. And Carly, you don't have to thank us for letting you join this. Thank you for coming. Thank you for writing that question, because you will have helped someone by writing that, because it gives people resonate and they know they're not alone as well. So Carly, what I would say is that if you feel frightened of accessing help, or you feel frightened of speaking on the phone, or having to call one, or go to your GP's surgery, I would really recommend you getting in touch with something like Shout, which is a crisis text line, mental health support line, which is manned 24/7 by trained volunteers who will be able to help you and point you in the right direction. And I'm going to get this wrong, and I'm hoping someone might be able to put it in the participants box, but I think you can access that by simply texting Shout to 85258. So that is also, oh, there we go, Sarah, thank you. That's a great thing to do for that first step if you're frightened. But also, here's the thing I want everyone to remember if they're frightened about going to ask for help, and what they might say is that every time you go and ask for help from someone, you are being an absolute legend. You're being a mental health advocate, because every time we step up and admit our mental health issues, we are holding the government accountable, because they know that there's one more person that experiences this, and there's one more person that they need to provide the provision for, if that makes any sense. Right. Let's see if someone would like to come and talk to me. Ruth Nicholson, you've put live on there, so I'm going to come and find you, and I'm going to allow you to talk. Ruth, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Ah, Ruth, how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you.
Can you be honest? Because you've can you ask me your question? Thank you for coming on and talking. What would you like to ask, Ruth?
Sure. So I've struggled with my mental health for a very, very long time. And I feel like part of me, I'm 25, so I feel like I kind of want to recover, but I think part of me still feels quite stuck. And I think like looking into it is because I'm so scared to step away from sort of these illnesses because I don't know a life without it and I don't know who I am without it.
Yeah.
So any advice around that area would be really great.
Oh my God, Ruth, this is such a good question. And thank you for asking it. Okay, because it's such an interesting thing and people don't talk about it enough, right? Which is the comfort we learn in discomfort, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like even though these things are completely hideous and horrible, it's like they become so familiar to us and we don't know how to get out of them. And I had treatment today with my ED counsellor, my eating disorder counsellor, and they started talking to me about self-sabotage. And I was like, oh, here I am still at 40 self-sabotaging, you know, because it's programmed into us from quite a young age, and it's what we know and it's what we learn. And again, it's about unlearning these things. But the very fact that you're aware of it is a pretty good sign that you are moving forward in the right direction. And I think that is that's something that people should really pat themselves on the back for, because often people will ask these questions and I'm like, well, you're on your way because you've asked the question, you're aware of it, and that's 90% of the battle, honey. Okay. So I would say that through coming up, talking to me on this and asking the question itself, you're in a pretty good place. So thank you so much, Ruth.
all right, that's made me feel better. Thank you.
Oh, you're a legend. Everyone, not that anyone can help, but Ruth, let's everyone clap. Clap for Ruth. Right. Thank you so much, my love. I'm going to stable talking and go to some more questions. Someone's just asked, Ellen, hello, Ellen, please could you talk about the process of finding help for binge eating? I called up BEAT, which is the eating disorders charity, and got in touch with their advice line, and they pointed me in the right direction. It's something we can all do. I don't off the top of my head know what the number is, but if you Google it, the information should come up. Right. Oh my God, there's so many questions, guys. Right. Here we go. Okay, Janine, I'm going to answer your question live. I'm going to find you and bring you in if that's okay. Sorry, I love this, being able to actually chat to people. Right, can you hear me? Asked you to unmute.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, Janine, how are you?
Hello. I'm good, thank you.
You have asked your question, and I'm so, it's a really, would you like to go ahead and ask it for everyone else to hear?
Yeah, okay. So my mum died 3 years ago, and she and I had a very toxic relationship because I was proving that I was stronger than her, and mostly because I didn't understand her mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I've encouraged my children to grow up having no respect for their grandmother because she was just trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only since she's died that I've realised how much she struggled with mental health, that I now acknowledge she had issues, and I'm eating humble pie. And I'm also acknowledging that I too now have mental health issues. There is nothing wrong in speaking out. It is okay to speak out. And actually, it's even better if you can speak out to your children and encourage positive discussions and not hide like I did with my mum. That saying, although I've moved on from that toxic relationship, there were other things that happened in our childhood that I'm struggling to still move on from. But you've got to talk aloud about even things like that, because that's probably the root of my current mental health issues.
Oh, Janine, it is Janine, isn't it?
Yes.
Can I just tell you something? What you've just said is, there's such humility and beauty in what you've just said, and I can't tell you how much I admire you, okay, because you've just shown up, you've shown such, I sound like some like hippie guru now, and I do apologize for that, but you have shown such vulnerability and admitting that, because who amongst us on this chat has not had absolute feelings of rage and anger at our parents for the way we were brought up or the way we weren't brought up? Do you know what I mean? I think that a lot of my the work I have to do on a daily basis is compassion, not to previous generations of my family that, you know, have gone before me, and how they didn't have the opportunities we did to get well, right? But also compassion that there wasn't the information, but also, and key here, Janine, for you, is compassion to yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Because this conversation that we're having about mental health issues is a really new one, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that realization can come about, you know, after someone has passed. But what I would say is that you're showing tremendous, you know, and as I said to Ruth previously, the fact that you're bringing it up, like, this is what we call doing the work, right? You know, there isn't, like, unfortunately, you know, I can't advise like a practical solution to what you have to do to get through it. You just have to experience it, right? And that's the key. You have to be alive to the pain, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? And get through it, because the only way, you know, is what's the thing, when you're going through hell, keep going. Yeah.
And I've got the burnt feet to prove it. However,
oh my God. And you know what, our scars are, thank you so much for coming and saying that. I feel like I wish we could be doing this like in an actual room all together. We could be going, yay, Janine, well done. That's what I want to say to you. So thank you so much for coming and asking that, and having the, you know, the humility and the bravery to do that. I'm going to remove you now and go to some more questions, but lots of love. Oh, I love people. Okay, here's a really good question from Rachel Fryer. There isn't an MHM in my local area, but I don't feel confident to set up a group myself. I would like to connect more deeply with other people, but I'm not the best conversationalist and tend towards spending time alone. Can you talk a bit about what it takes to set up a walk in a group? Rachel, that's a really great question. So because we understand how hard that can be, we are going to move. And we've seen also how online Zooms can be a really good starting point for people that they don't quite feel like they have the, they don't quite feel ready to go on a walk. We found that these Zooms actually, you know, there's pluses do come out of negatives. And the thing we found through this pandemic is that it's been a really fantastic way to reach people who would never have wanted to go on a walk, but they are finding connections through this. So what I would say is, you know, come and try out some of the local Zooms in your area, and then, or, you know, near to your area, go in, you know, slowly build up. That's my kind of advice. And also remember that if you don't, here's my other thing, is that you're saying you're not much of a conversationalist, you don't feel, if you're not the kind of person, if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to set up a walk, that doesn't make you a failure as a person. There's millions of different types of people, and it's okay to not be a conversationalist. It's okay to be shy. It's okay to feel all of this. It's okay to feel fear about these things. Yeah, that just makes you normal. And so maybe instead of thinking about setting one up, why don't you try coming along to more of the online ones, getting involved that way, and then see where that takes you. Right. Okay. Oh, sorry, my laptop is rubbish. I shouldn't, the workman shouldn't blame his tools. Right, we have a few more questions. This has gone so quickly. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go to Lizzy. Lizzy, you've asked for live. So I have one more question live. Hang on, where are we? Sorry, this is not so smooth. Right, allowed to talk. Oh, unfortunately, I'm going to have to promote you to panelist, Lizzy. Lizzy, are you there?
Yes, hi Bryony.
Hi Lizzy, how are
Hello.
you?
Hi, I'm all right actually, thank you. Yeah, I'm good at the moment.
That's good to hear. Nice to hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say you inspired me to start writing about my own mental health and sharing it, and I feel quite nervous whenever I publish something and like friends read it and things, but I get such a brilliant response that it's kind of kept me doing it. But in the last year or so, I've given up alcohol.
Well done.
Just over a year now. Thank you. And through that, my mental health diagnosis has changed from major depressive disorder to bipolar disorder 2.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of changes, you know, a lot of things to come to terms with. And I just find that all the time I'm like, oh, who am I now? Because I'm not that person that used to be out, you know, having fun with everybody. I'm not the life and soul anymore. And now who am I because I've got bipolar, and who do other people think I am because are they identifying me by my mental illness now because I write and talk about it? And I just wondered whether you ever felt that, and how do you deal with that if you have, you know, that you kind of go through, am I still the person that I always was somewhere, or am I changing so dramatically? I don't know who I am.
Lizzy, you're Lizzy, that's who you are. And Lizzy, like all of us, will change and shift. Just because you have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, that doesn't mean you have changed as a person. It just means that Lizzy has gone out there, and Lizzy has had the bravery and the gumption to go out and get a proper diagnosis for what's going on in her brain. And I would say that we are not, as I said in that reading of the book, we are not our diagnoses. Do you know what I mean? But they do help us, those diagnoses, to explain what's going on in our brain, you know? And, you know, I'm not defined by my mental illness, but my, you know, my experience of life very much can be, you know, I think that's what, that's the way I think of it. So I need to kind of manage it. But, you know, you are Lizzy and all your brilliant, you know, glorious Technicolor. And, you know, there's so many different parts of us, aren't there? And it's a bit like if I was to get a diagnosis of diabetes, I wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't suddenly become, you know, who I am as a person. And I think it's really important that we remember that mental illnesses don't define who we are as people, but they can define how we view our lives. And so in that case, we need to kind of do what we can to manage them and help cope. Does that make any sense? Did that answer a question at all?
Yeah. So like your essence is still you, but you deal with things. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's nothing to be ashamed of as well. Like, you know, it's a bit like we wouldn't be ashamed of a medical diagnosis. Do you know what I mean? Like, sorry, that is a medical diagnosis, bipolar. We wouldn't be ashamed of a physical diagnosis. You know, it's not. It isn't. You know, it doesn't have to take up our whole lives. I do think, though, for me as an alcoholic in recovery, one of the things I've learned, and this applies to all areas of, and this applies to my OCD, and I very much see all of them as one kind of thing in my head, yeah? But that if I don't put my recovery from these illnesses first, everything else goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I do have to focus on my recovery from those illnesses, but that doesn't mean I'm living in my illness. Does that make sense? It means I'm living in life and getting better.
Yeah.
If that,
yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizzy. I'm gonna take you down from, oh, this is right, change role to attendee. Thank you, Lizzy. We've probably got time for a couple more. Here's a good Megan. Megan has severe paranoia Oh, it's disappeared. Sorry, my computer is, as I said, these are technical glitches that we will iron out for the next session. Megan has severe paranoia when it comes to her job. She constantly feels like she's being watched, judged, and seen as a child. I get so frightened all the time, and I lose sleep and spend my nights panicking about going in the next day. I feel like my boss gaslights me, which makes this so much worse. This is very heavy on top of my anxiety and depression. Any advice for this? Oh, Megan, right. What I think you need to do is maybe your boss is gaslighting you. Okay, so like I think that we can take our maybe they're not, you know, I don't know precisely what the situation is, but I think we can use our mental health issues to beat ourselves with and go, well, I must be making this up, I must be undermining myself. What I would do is, you've had the courage to write this question on here in this webinar tonight. Is there someone at work that you trust to talk to about this in a neutral way? Is there a friend you have that maybe you could discuss the situation with? And often what this also helps us to do is get a bit of distance from it. So even if you don't end up taking any decision, it does allow us to kind of, you know, move away. But also I would remember that right now, we're living in very uncertain times, and that can really, really have an effect on the way we perceive things. I'm gonna confess something to you, Megan, and you might be like, what? No, I spend a great deal of my time experiencing severe paranoia about my career, and that it's all going to go, and that my next book no one will read, or no one will care, or people will think I'm awful, or they'll read the thing and they'll think it's rubbish and it doesn't help, and I'm actually hindering people. Like, these are the things that go in my head, right? And my brain has always been like that. So it's just a different iteration of stuff that my brain was telling me ages ago. And I try and remind myself that the reason, when it gets particularly loud, that paranoia, that it's me, I'm gaslighting myself. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone. And, you know, actually I need to go easy on myself. I need to try and remove as many stress factors as possible. And, you know, and look after myself. So, try and breathe, Megan. I've written actually a section in the book about breathing, because people used to say to me, Bryony, have you tried breathing? And I think, of course I've tried breathing, I'm alive. But I realized there's breathing to stay alive, and then there's breathing to enjoy staying alive. And there's things like 3-4-5 breathing that Dr. Rangan Chatterjee talks about a lot in his books. And these are techniques that you can Google that genuinely do slow down your nervous system so you relax a bit. But what I'd say, Megan, is that a lot of people have exactly the same thing, similar things to what you have. That's not to undermine what you have, but it's to tell you you're not alone. There are so many questions, and I feel like I can't get through them all. And also my my laptop, I do apologize if I haven't got round to answering your question. My laptop isn't that great on opening up the participants, but we'll iron all these glitches out. Victoria says, listen, she's got a stressful call tomorrow, which she's dreading. Victoria, we are behind you. But Victoria says she's definitely going to practice some breathing beforehand to calm herself down. I've got a stressful call tomorrow that I'm dreading. I was slightly dreading doing this tonight because I thought I was going to muck it all up. And I wish I'd taken some of my own advice and done some breathing before. You know, we're all a bit mad, aren't we? And as the book says, there's no such thing as normal. And I wish Aisha, your question was not too long and irrelevant. It is literally my screen kept scrolling quickly through things, so I could only grab. It's nothing to do with you. It's my ridiculous laptop. Tracy, thank you for your advice. Too afraid to talk tonight, feeling tears and couldn't talk. Sorry, please don't apologize, Tracy. We're just so grateful that you asked the question about OCD. And I really, really, really hope that you can find someone to talk to about it. And I just want to send you all the love and let you know that you're not alone. Big kisses to you, Tracy. Big kisses to all of you. So we will be back. We'll be back February the 1st, I believe it is. And I am going to be interviewing someone, I can't announce their name yet, but it's someone who's really brilliant at talking about how to access mental health care. And we would love you to be here, to come to ask questions. As I said, if you want to look for Mental Health Mates walks online, they're all up there on the website, mentalhealthmates.co.uk. Also, you can follow us on Instagram. I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to apologise if I was slightly rambling and not the professional television presenter that I'm not. I'm not a professional television presenter. I'm just me, a bird with mental health issues, a history of mental illness, trying best I can to connect with you guys. I'm going to leave it there. This has been recording. We'll upload it to the website, and massive snogs to everyone. Mwah!